As a doctor, defendant Plasencia knew full well the danger of what he was doing. In fact, on one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine for defendant Iwamasa to administer to Mr. Perry. Of course, defendant Iwamasa had no medical training to speak of.
The death of Friends star Matthew Perry is what's trending in true crime this morning, as a doctor who sold him ketamine illegally prior to his overdose is now off to prison. The judge handed down the sentence of 2.5 years for Dr. Salvador Plasencia in a federal courtroom on Wednesday in California. The doctor pleaded guilty to distributing ketamine to the actor weeks before his accidental overdose death. The judge emphasized that Plasencia didn't provide the ketamine that killed Perry, but told him, quote, "You and others helped Mr. Perry on the road to such an ending by continuing to feed his ketamine addiction." So we're asking, is a 2+ year sentence for Perry's death justice when it comes to this doctor defendant? Should he have gotten more time? Let's bring in our legal eagles in the studio. Attorney Tommy Pope, and joining me remotely, Attorney Michael J. Brown. All right, Michael, what do you say? Is this fair for the doctor? Why or why not, please?
I do, Julie, and I'll tell you, because remember, they keep attributing this to the death of Matthew Perry, but you got to remember, what he sold Matthew Perry was not what caused his death. That's attributed to the ketamine queen. Did he help him in terms of the dependency and the addiction, and did he exceed the medical prescription? He certainly did. And 2 years is significant. There's a lot of mitigation here. He's trained at UCLA. I'm sure he did a lot of good in his medical practice and helped a lot of people. So we don't want to look at 2 years in federal prison and say, hey, that's nothing. Because at the end of the day, he's not the reason that Matthew Perry is dead. So I think that is a fair and just type of sentence.
A really good explanation, Michael. Thank you. We know that they were miles apart, the respective sides. The prosecution was asking for 3 years, Tommy, and the defense was asking for just a day in prison and probation. Your thoughts, please?
I think Michael's spot on with this one. You know, you've got to take a step back and look. It's not an a death, but I agree with the judge. It kind of sent him on his way. But you know, I think lawyers, doctors, police officers, we're held to a higher standard. And I think that's what you're seeing too. And, you know, 2 years, even though, you know, we always laugh about federal prison being like the country club, 2 years is something. His reputation, his medical license, all of those things are probably the greater punishment. And so I think it was a fair punishment. Again, recognizing there's 6 individuals involved. And this shows what, you know, the prosecution does. These aren't the glamorous ones necessarily. It is because of who passed away, but that's tedious work. Think the work that went behind tracking this down, the investigators. And I think that's important too, to show you've got to send the message, hopefully to other doctors that would consider, you know, we saw it in the opioid crisis. People were giving that out like candy because they would make so much money on it. And I think this is a good chance to send a message. And I don't think if you worked like what you did with law school, you wouldn't want to give up all that and go to jail for 2 years. So I think Michael's spot on this.
Yes, really great points about sending a message to other people, thinking that, oh, you want to get some fast cash? Well, look, you're going to lose your medical license, your practice, go off to prison. You both know federal prison's going to be tough, especially for a guy like this, you know, who presumably hasn't done a day anywhere, not even in county. Look out. So, Tommy, as you noted, this is the first of these 5 defendants who are all sentenced in connection to Matthew Perry's death. And so this is a network that prosecutors explained. Remember way back when they first announced the charges? Let's go back in time together.
This network included a live-in assistant, various go-betweens, 2 medical doctors, and a major source of drug supply known as, quote, the ketamine queen. These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
So 2 defendants in the case, including a woman known as the ketamine queen, this is her here, admitted to distributing the ketamine to Matthew Perry that killed him back in September of 2023. And in this past September, we saw a guilty plea from her. She's going to be sentenced next week. So, of course, we're going to be watching this closely. She's looking at a maximum of 65 years in prison. So how much time should the ketamine queen get with her sentence? Michael, going back to you, you made the distinction earlier that the doctor wasn't the one who supplied the drugs that killed Perry. She was. What do you think would be fair for her?
Yeah, she's the culprit here, Julian. You know, remember, going back to the doctor, ketamine is a legal prescription. It has a lot of valuable uses. Now you're dealing with the ketamine queen. And remember also, in her situation, there's an allegation, I believe, where her sale of these illicit drugs actually caused the death of somebody else several years before. She is a drug dealer. That's what she does. She sells ketamine, allegedly, illegally, on the street to kids and moms and dads and anybody who wants them, and she gets a huge profit, and she puts herself out there, you know, all over the internet and lives an extravagant lifestyle, all off of the proceeds of the illicit activity, and it resulted in the death of Matthew Perry. So I think if anybody's going to pay a significant price, she's the one who's going to pay that price.
Definitely, Michael. Well said. I hope the judge launches her. Tommy, what do you think? Is there an amount of years you think that would be appropriate?
You know, if they're doing federal sentencing, I always felt like that ended up being a little lighter than what we'd see on the state side. But, you know, we've actually struggled in South Carolina. You know, I'm in the legislature with fentanyl deaths. And it ties a little bit to the knowledge of, and it wasn't the knowledge that I knew it would kill you. If I pulled a gun, it was the knowledge that I knew I was giving you fentanyl because you knew how deadly it is. Now, I don't know as much about ketamine as far as death statistics and things of that nature. But again, Michael's going to give me an office at his place if I keep agreeing with him, you know. But I think
would be the dream team. Let me tell you.
I think he's right. And you know, with the feds, I mean, I think they treat it like a murder case. So if the feds give 20 or 30 or what they would give for a murder case, I think they need to treat it like that. And I think it's fair that the judge take into consideration the things Michael was talking about, the lifestyle, the profiting off of others. So it's really sending a bigger message than just this death. And again, we've had the same with the fentanyl thing. The secondary, we've had like more than one person die from the same dealer.
Yes.
I think that you know, the beauty is that, you know, you're not dealing with a jury, then you're dealing with the judge and sentencing, and he can decide or she can decide what to take into consideration. So I'm with you. I think we're going to see a significant departure from that, you know, 2.5 years we just saw.
Right. Excellent points, Tommy. Boy, you know, and I started thinking as you both were talking how much money this woman has made. I hope they seized all of it. I hope that they can do some good with that money and that it's taken away from her because putting profits over people is just appalling. And that's what all these people did here, you know. It's really, really, really disgusting. We'll leave it there for now. Again, the ketamine queen gets sentenced next week, and Court TV will be covering it.